Hello everyone, welcome back to my Java programming tutorial series. This is going to be the first part in a three-part sub-series, I guess you could call it, on different kind of loops you could do in Java. Now loops are very, very important. If you want to make an algorithm, you're most likely going to need to use loops because that's what an algorithm is. It's just doing a whole bunch of very simple things over and over again until you solve a problem in its most basic form. I guess that's what an algorithm would be. So anyway, last time we did arrays, and I said that, say we wanted to print out all the elements of this array, 1, 2, 3, 4. This is how we would have to do it without loops. So the first loop we're going to talk about is the while loop. Now, there's three different kinds of loops, like I said, but they're all a little bit different, but they all accomplish the same thing. So we're going to print out 1, 2, 3, 4 without doing it like this, because say we have 100 numbers, we don't want to have to print out or do 100 system out.println lines of code or statements, I guess, in a row just to print out 100 numbers. So to make a while loop, actually let's first go over here and just grab this. We're just going to copy and paste that into this file here, okay? And we're going to make our while loop. So a while loop is very easy to make. All you got to do is just say while, open close parentheses, and then open close brackets, as if we're going to make like a class or a method. It's the same thing, curly braces, just to open a block of code. So it's giving me an error right now. I need to put something inside of these parentheses that tells me when to stop the loop. Otherwise, the loop's going to go on forever, and that's called an infinite loop. Sometimes you'll have that without even noticing, and that will cause problems with your program. So when you're making these while loops, always make sure that it will terminate at some point, because your program will stall and crash most likely. So anyway, I don't know, let's say we're going to print out all these numbers, right? So each one of these elements of this array is, it's enumerated, as I said in the last episode. So this is the 0th element, this is the first element, second, and the third element, adding up to 4 elements altogether. So we are going to come over here, and we're just going to make a new integer called int counter, right? And we're going to set that equal to 0. And you'll see why we're going to do that in a second. So now inside of here, we got to think about what we're going to be doing. So we want to print out all the elements of this array. So when do we want this to stop? We want this to stop when it gets past this last element and there's no more elements past it. So if we have an array, there's actually an attribute of the array that we can take advantage of called the length of the array. So we're going to say while counter is less than nums.length. And as you would do with any other attribute of a variable or an object, if you want to take one of the attributes away, or not take away, but I guess view that attribute of an object or a variable, you put a dot. So that's why we said nums.length, because we're going to take the length of nums, which in this case is 4. So while counter is less than nums.length, we're going to do something. So it's going to come over here, we're going to get to this line of code, we're going to check, is counter less than nums.length? In this case, it's 4, so 0 is less than 4. So it's going to come in here and it's going to do everything that's in this block of code. So we're going to say system.out.println nums sub counter. So here, in the first loop of this while loop, it's going to come here. It's going to say counter 0, nums.length is 4. So it's going to say 0 is less than 4. Yes, it is. So it's going to come here. It's going to go print out the 0th element of nums, because counter is 0. All right. Then we're going to say we need to increase counter, because otherwise it's going to come back up here and it's going to say 0 is less than 4 again. It's going to keep doing that over and over again. So we need to increase the value of counter. So there's a couple ways we could do that. I'll show you, I guess, the most intuitive way. and I'll show you the most efficient way. So the way that you would, kind of expect it to work would be to say counter equals counter plus 1. So we're going to set the value of counter to the original value of counter plus 1. So we're just going to add 1 to counter. So after this line is executed, it's going to go from 0 to 1 because we're going to add 1 to 0, obviously. All right. The other way to do this is just to say counter plus plus. Now that was just an extra little feature added into Java because this happens a lot. If you make any sort of program that's bigger than just a couple lines of code like I'm doing in this, you'll be adding 1 to variables a lot. So they just kind of add that in to make it easier. So we could either do it like this, or we could actually come up here, get rid of this line, and we could just say counter plus plus in here. So what this means is it's going to come over here, it's going to take the variable or the value that's in the 0th element of nums, and then it's going to add 1 to counter. So we just do everything in one line. If, say, we could also do this, we could say plus plus counter. So now instead of taking the 0th element, it's first going to add 1 to counter and then take that element, so it's going to print out 2 instead of 1. But we're going to go back to the way we had it. Plus plus. All right. So either way works. We could just say counter and then do counter plus plus down here. But if you have a big project with a lot of increments, you'd rather keep them, get rid of one line of code every time. All right, so we're going to do that. So now this is pretty much set. So if we try to run this, what's going to happen? It should print out this exactly. Let's see, I might have messed something up. No, I didn't. Okay. I thought for a second that I might have messed this up and it was going to give me an error or something. Like, let's say I said counter is less than or equal to nums.length. It will give me an error, or it should. Yeah. So so basically here it's going to increment counter until it gets up to 4, and then it's going to try to access the 4th element, so 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, but there is no 4, so it's going to give me the array index out of bounds exception that we had in the last episode. All right, so that is pretty much it for this episode. Next time we will talk about do while loops, which are very similar to while loops, but slightly different. So stay tuned for that.